While many argue that preschool is unnecessary, it is not only necessary, but very crucial. Hello, my name is Gabe Ivins, and I'm an advocate for mandatory preschool. Did you guys know that on average, 30 million fewer words are heard by children in homes that receive government assistance by the age of 3? Which means that by the age of 3, you've not only created a huge gap, but this gap can equate out into years and can set your child behind for high school and even college. I'm going to walk you guys through the gist of what I got out of an ebook called Integrated Processing, which is how we teach young children how to learn to read. So, obviously learning the alphabet would come first, and then we would get them to know the sounds of the individual letters. So I'm going to walk you through how we would teach a child to say brown. So we're going to start with the individual letters, which would be b, r, ow, un, n. For us, it seems very simple. For a child, this can be quite a daunting task. We're going to break it down then into syllables. So we're going to go br, ow, n. Again, seems like a small step for us, but this can be a huge step for such a small child. Then we're eventually going to get them to say the whole word, which this is not an overnight process and can actually take weeks. And we're going to get them to say brown. And then we're going to put it in a sentence that can challenge them. And this would be the brown dog jumped. And you would work them through each word of the sentence, get them to know their letters, their sounds, syllables, and then eventually you would get them to memorize paragraphs or say paragraphs. Cognitive and fine motor skills not only correlate, but greatly impact one's future, which means cognitive plus fine motor development equals a higher success rate among children. We might not think this is such a big deal, but by a show of hands, can I see who participated in centers in preschool? Right. For us, that seemed like play, but what it actually is tying in all these things, which is fine motor and cognitive development. While observing Ms. Megan Spence's classroom, I observed these 4 activities, which again, for us may not seem too hard, but for these children can be quite tasking. So right around the room. Right around the room is when she would give them a paper, a pencil, and a clipboard, and she would send them around the room to write any of the words they saw. And as a child, you might not know the word or how to say it, but what it's going to do is it's going to work your fine motor skills on writing the letter and then your mind on what the letter is. So while you might not piece the word together and say it, you're going to know the individual letter, and in their head they'll be saying the sound and then working their muscles to really tie that in. Another really important one that's overlooked is a rice box. So what this is an elevated sandbox about preschool height off the floor, and it has uncooked rice, uncooked pinto beans, stress balls, and toys and stuff like that. And that's going to let them break their hands through it and go ahead and get their fine motor, their finger muscles moving to where they can eventually build up the strength to hold up pencils for longer standards of time. And then counting cards. Counting is a really hard concept for a child, and this is actually what math usually consists of from preschool, kindergarten, and sometimes even first grade. So what's going to happen is they're going to learn their numbers, and like I said, this is not challenging for us, but to them, 6 is just a word. They can spell it and they can say it, but they don't understand what it represents. To them, 5 and 6 mean the same thing. So what they did was they put like playing cards, but this was during the Winter Olympics, so they used little people on skis. And that way they could physically count out each one of the people on skis to help tie in that physical concept with the cognitive. And then we have color identification. Again, this is similar to the numbers. They can know the word blue and know the word green, but until they physically see that there's a difference in the color, they're not going to begin to grasp that concept. All right, so a reassessment of old thinking is really important when it comes to this, because it was once thought that during this age in the child's life, 0 to 3, it wasn't important. Just give them a bottle, sit them in the corner, let them play with some blocks, it's fine. But what this actually is this is a really important time to get them to learn their language, get them to learn all these things that they really need to know, because it's actually like a window that's closing. So this is when you need to get all this information in their heads. And this, from ages 0 to 3 years of age, the child's brain is 2.5 times more active than the average adult, which may just seem like a bland statistic. But when you think about it, this child's mind is 2.5 times more active than anybody in this room. Now I'm going to walk you guys through the progression of idiosyncrasy. And what idiosyncrasy is that is learning mannerisms, phonics, anything that comes with a group of people. So on a small scale, this is going to be like if you have a child who doesn't like broccoli and they sit at a table of 9 others that do. So eventually this child's going to evolve to like broccoli, or he's going to at least pretend to like it because it's kind of like a peer pressure situation. But when you put this on a larger scale, what's going to happen is you're going to have a bilingual child who will think, speak, and act out those mannerisms like home. So in, say, a specific circumstance, you have an Italian person or a Spanish person or any person that speaks a different language, and that at their home, they're going to think in Spanish. They're going to have phonics that are pronounced in Spanish, and so on. And so then when you expose them to public school, his or her peers will begin to think, speak, and act like them. So they're going to go ahead and adapt to speaking English, learning the phonics, and even mimicking words that or sounds that we don't even fully take in. And then you're going to have, within a few years, the child will have completely adapted to this new language. They will fluently think, speak, and be able to understand all of this, which is not an overnight process. This can take quite an amount of time, which is often why you see, speech pathologists in the elementary or speech teachers that specifically work with these children. Are grants an option? Many say if you're going to make preschool mandatory, we're going to need a grant or a way to fund this. And while Missouri has several grants that are preschool assistance, the federal government does too. 50 states applied for the federal assistance grant. 36% of the grants were given, which was an unmet need of 64%, which is unacceptable. Missouri was sadly one of the 32 denied states, which means teachers are paying for books, desks, chairs, pens, and papers all by themselves, which again is unacceptable. All this information sparked the idea to create 20 education kits, one of which being in front of you. I'm going to walk you guys through what all I had, manipulatives I had put in my kit. So the first one being, I printed off shapes and several other things that I laminated so the children could first of all draw on them with expo markers. So the first one has shapes, and I printed them in color so they can either trace the shapes or identify the color that they're in. Then I printed off a ABC Connect the Dot in the form of a schoolhouse, so they can go ahead and have that fine motor and cognitive skills to learn their ABCs, and then again, it's fun and it feels like play, so they probably won't, bother you with you. And then I have a name tag that is again laminated. And while this is a name tag, they can practice sight words, the alphabet, anything. And again, it's printed in color so they can review their patterns. This was a personal favorite of mine because it was kind of spontaneous. I didn't plan to make this one. I had just grabbed some pipe cleaners and some beads because I was like, what could go wrong? But what I ended up really liking about this is I put them on a pipe cleaner, and originally I had planned to put them on a string, but I figured that a string would be too flimsy for such little fingers. So with the pipe cleaner where it's a little more stiff, I put letter beads on them so they can go through and individually sound out the beads. And I did not knot the ends very good because that way if their teacher wants them to take them off and spell their name or sight words or maybe their neighbor's name, they can go ahead and learn that as well. Another thing, this one wasn't really so much educational, just to kind of keep their attention. This one is kind of, their color identification, but they're just pom-poms. So it's something that's just kind of going to intrigue them to play with and kind of go over. This was another one I really hadn't planned on. So what it is this one says yellow, and this one is just a yellow tab. So it's going to connect, the word yellow and what yellow is to the fine motor movement of connecting it to. This one's kind of a fun one. Anyway, so what it is it's a spaghetti necklace. Who here had a spaghetti necklace as a child? All right, so to us, again, it seems very simple, and really it just seems like, oh, it's a necklace. But what it is it ties in your numbers. So what it's going to do is it's going to be like those counting cards where it ties in, count out 3 and you can physically move 3. So, and that was the contents of the box. So a stretch I ran into was due to conflicting work schedules between me and my first mentor, Miss Megan Spence. I had 15 hours I needed to meet, and I had 7 with Miss Spence. And then after that, the year got busy, and we kind of had conflicting schedules between her and her daughters, and their activities, and my school work and extracurricular schedule. So then I added Miss Waltz due to her expertise in early childhood development, as she teaches a class on it. So again, Miss Wall's schedule kind of jived more with mine, and we were able to, do more. And then another stretch that I had ran into that Miss Walls kind of helped bring to my attention was I was aiming for too high. I was wanting the kids to spell and pronounce whole words when they barely knew their letters or could barely write. So she would kind of help bring me down to that level and was like, you're looking at this from a 12th grade point of view, and they're preschool. They barely can read or write. So they really need to, take it back to the basics. They're not counting or saying their ABCs, so maybe gear it up from there. Now, I want you guys to envision a classroom full of 15 kids. These are not only kids, they are presidents, CEOs, leaders, doctors, political activists, and mathematicians. Now I want you to subtract every skill that preschool provides. Imagine a lethargic, poorly coordinated athlete, a world leader with a lisp or inability to speak, a mathematician who is unable to count to 10. Do we see why these are vital now? Due to the fact that preschool is not mandatory, there are children who lack the essential cognitive, fine motor, and language skills that are key for success. Preschool is one of the most constitutive ways to solve this gap. Fixing these issues for preschool would not only assist the children developmentally, but strengthen society as a whole. Additionally, I would like to say thank you for each and every one of you for taking time away from your friends, family, hobbies, and workplace. I look forward to viewing your feedback. And there's my work site. Are there any questions? Yes.
Did Ms. Spence use those 4 things that you had at the very beginning, like the counting,
Yeah,
rice
absolutely.
box, and
Yeah, that was stuff I had observed in her classroom because what I wanted to do, I went through and I observed her classroom on top of my additional mentor hours because what I remember as preschool and what preschool is now can be 2 very different things. So I really wanted to go back and re-grasp what all she was doing and tie it into my research. Yes.
Kits that you created, is it something that kids will be able to take home, or is it something that will stay in the classroom?
What I had designed was originally a classroom set, so that way they can get it out during their center time and kind of go through it, and then when it's time to put them up, they can put them up for the next group to use.
Did the kids seem to enjoy that?
Yes, Ms. Spence had been updating me on what they were using, and I think they really liked the ones that they could write on, because, I mean, as a kid with an expo marker, like, it's always fun to draw and not have a mess to clean up. Are there any other questions? Thank you.